Hello， 大家好，我是 Alec。那我们今天受到了 Bio 的邀请，来到了瑞士的 Neuchâtel Bio 的总部。那我们很庆幸的可以有 Thomas 坐下来跟我们聊一聊他的品牌、他的原始、他怎么开始的。那我们先请 Thomas 跟我们做一个很简单的自己的自我介绍。So Thomas, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
With pleasure, Alec. Very, very honored to welcome you here
Thank
in the
you.
HQ. You see a beautiful place. You see a traditional place here in Neuchâtel, one of the most beautiful buildings. And what you see in the background as well is important to me. That's a painting from my father. So we like tradition in my brand. I certainly come back to this very soon. So basically about myself, I'm a child from the watch industry. I was born and raised in La Chaux-de-Fonds. For those of you who know the industry well, you know that this is the right place, the mecca from the watch industry, where most of the prominent brand are producing the parts. I'm a child from the watch industry, so I was literally born and raised in a watch. And my father was not a watchmaker. I have about 200 years of history in the family handling or dealing with the watch industry, but my father was a journalist. And he was handling the local newspaper from the state of Neuchâtel. And being a journalist in Neuchâtel means, of course, that you are very active in the watch industry. So at lunchtime, when I was a kid, we had always the tenor, the spokespeople from the industry, Mr. Hayek, Bloom, Banvar, those people who really forged the watch industry as it is today, they came for lunch. And I used to hear my father and them speaking about the industry, what I like to call from the kitchen side. Because it's nice to speak about watches from a watchmaker perspective, and you speak about movement, you speak about all these things, but I think it's very important to understand the kitchen from the industry, from those who really do the watches. And I come from that region. People who do the watches are usually the forgotten people together with the end consumer. We speak about brands, we speak about the watches, but not the real hero. They're not from Hollywood. The real hero are the guys waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning doing your watches. Those were my friends from school, my cousins, my brothers, etc. They work all in the watch industry, and we actually do the watches. So when I was a kid, I always used to say, one day I'll sell watches to the world. Sell watches to the world. And that's exactly what I did, Alec. I spent 15 years working for renowned Swiss watch brand, independent watch brand. And I was building the international distribution for those brands. So basically, I was the guy enabling those brands to sell. And that's very important. And that was my job, and that's my history. It's great to produce watches. You enjoy the watches you wear on your wrist. But so that you have them on your wrist, there is a guy like me who made the bridge between the brand and the end consumer. So I was the guy making it possible for brands to sell and possible for you as a customer to buy the watches. So that was my job. And I did it all around the world for several brands, for 3 different brands. And at the same time, I started to teach, giving lectures at university. And I created my own academy, the Watch Trade Academy, which I had to pause now because we have too much work here. But for 2-3 years, I trained hundreds of executives from the watch industry on how you actually sell a watch. I was teaching the traditional commerce and, of course, the extension, which is the digital, hitting the commerce, which makes the e-commerce.
Okay.
And both models are suboptimal. You remember I did a lot of economic history. And I wanted to understand or rethink those business models, which to me were suboptimal. The commerce, as you know, is excellent because you can go in a store, someone welcomes you, you try the watches. But people often don't know that when you buy the watch in a store, the least you're paying for is the watch. 60-70% of what you pay when you buy a watch is not the watch, it's the commodity of buying the watch. The e-commerce is a straight bridge between the brand and the end consumer, so you avoid all intermediaries and all these things, but it's very dry in terms of experience.
Yes.
So between the commerce and e-commerce, the physical and the digital way of doing business, I was looking for a midway called the phygital approach.
Phygital.
Where you have the experience, but you keep the margin. And on a very theoretical way, I started to inquire, think, and teach on a possible digital way that would make the best of the two worlds. When you come to e-commerce, you recover all those margins, but nobody sees you. So you have to over-invest in marketing, in Instagram, in whatever media,
social media,
etc., influencers, Instagrammers, etc. You have to pay them, and ultimately, anything a brand pays, it's you, the end consumer,
it's
who has to bear the
come
cost.
on to the customer.
In the end, you are the guy paying for everything.
Yes.
And we have spoken a lot about this, you and I, and we heard it so many times. When the people look at our quality, at that tourbillon, which is 100% produced here, we'll go this afternoon to visit the guy who makes the tourbillon, so that you're sure, and we'll go around to see all the guys who produce the boxes, the case, the glass, etc. It's 100% made here, that tourbillon. Nevertheless, the price is so accessible that nobody believes us. So that's why we have, and thank you for following us and taking part of this explanation, because it's not intuitive. Intuitively, when you see our tourbillon and the price, you say it's not possible.
Okay, so Thomas, you mentioned about giving the end consumer the meat that they pay for, and about high-end watches. So when you talk about high-end watches, everyone knows is the tourbillon.
Yeah,
so
that's the king in the chest.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows. Even people who don't collect watches knows what a tourbillon is. So
and how unachievable and payable this usually is.
Yeah. So I think the most important motto for you, other than chapter 1, would be the tourbillon.
That definitely changed the course of my project or my brand. Absolutely.
Because I know personally, because I follow the news, and when you launched the tourbillon, it made a huge wave across the world, across the forums. People are talking about it. Some people don't understand how you could sell it at this price. So what's the
idea behind?
What me and the end consumer wants to know is, how did this project come about?
It was all logical, and actually, in our brand, the collection are called chapters. It means that the book was more or less already written in my head when I started that project. As I told you, it was just a concept, wasn't meant to become a brand. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to demonstrate and show that you can completely rethink a business model. And I did it first with a watch that was not Swiss made. Chapter 3, I made a Swiss made watches below $500. So people said, look, your model is fine, but it works only with cheap watches, whether it's Swiss or non-Swiss. And then I said, you know what, let's do the next chapter. Let's switch to the next chapter. Let's do a tourbillon. And the question was, can I make 100% Swiss-made tourbillon? We speak about it because it's not just do a tourbillon. We went in every detail, every angle to make it as beautiful. And the characteristic of that tourbillon is just amazing. Great, thanks Olivier Maury, but not just Olivier Maury. All the finishes, all the material that we use is the premium one you would find in brands. Can we sell through my model a tourbillon at $50,000? I wanted to answer that question. And I answered that question in 6 weeks from the idea of making a tourbillon to my first prototype on my wrist. It took me 6 weeks.
That's very fast.
And that will be interesting to see how and why all the suppliers helped me. In the history, I think nobody had developed a tourbillon from scratch, from an idea, in 6 weeks. And the answer was yes, I can make a tourbillon in my business model. Just the little change is that it doesn't cost 50,000, it costs roughly 5,000 for the first batch I produced, which was prepaid. So now we moved up to $7,000-8,000, which is still by far the cheapest tourbillon. I don't like cheap because when you associate cheap, people will think less quality.
Most affordable one.
Most affordable or amazing price. So that was really the idea, still a bit academic idea, to prove that in my concept, it's not just about doing the entry price. You can go to tourbillon, and the highest we go, see here we have again a tourbillon GMT, and we're less than $10,000. And it's an amazing one, and it's 100% produced here. So the highest we go, and we might go with even more complication, and the higher we go, the biggest gap will be with the few brands in the world capable of doing what we might do one day. And of course, it was a shock in the whole watch community worldwide, and we sold a lot in the world, We sold over 1,000 tourbillons that we have already delivered. But it was a shock here in the Watch Valley because people would say, how is that possible? So the first reaction was, it's not Swiss made, it's not possible. And then everybody, as I said, inquired and understood and had to acknowledge that yes, it is exactly what we promised to the end consumer and make them adopt your brand. We speak about the tourbillon, but for the price of an Apple Watch, you have an amazing Swiss made watch skeleton. When we speak about innovation in Switzerland, many times we understand product. So we have a silicium escapement, we have amazing new materials. So when we think about innovation, it's always focused within the watch. But as you know today, Alec, it's not about reinventing the taxi, it's about Uber. Rethink the way you sell a watch is exactly what Bayo is bringing to the market. And you can see, again, walk the walk, that the result is there. We have amazing timepieces, and at the price and challenge and unrivaled in the market. And that was the exact intention of my tourbillon. And when it comes to the piece itself, it's great to speak about the business model. If you dive into the tourbillon, you will notice, of course, that you have an amazing skeletonized tourbillon. So why is it skeletonized first? The idea, as I told you, was to be transparent, not only in the business model, on the way it works, for the business model, but on the way it works for the watch itself. So you see a full skeletonized tourbillon. First, it's encaged in a beautiful titanium grade 5 case. That's the most resistant titanium you may get. And it's a color developed by our partner in La Chaux-de-Fonds, Positive Coating. They have a DLC coating, diamond-like carbon, which is much better than the usual PVD. And that color is called Tantal Gray. It's the color developed just for us on the outside case of the watch. Nobody had done this before. So it's a very beautiful dark gray, but less dark probably than what you usually call the black or whatsoever. And then when you go into the watch itself, you will see that every angle, every bridge of the platen has been angled. It's a machine angle, so it's not done by hand, but still it goes very much into the detail, even in the inner angle, which is usually something you cannot do and achieve with a machine. We made the angle everywhere on the platen. You have engraving on the barrel. Actually, this is a bit personal. It's a sentence from my father, which I put on the barrel because I wanted to pay a tribute to my father. As I told you, he made a lot for the Swiss watch industry, and I thought it was nice to dedicate this watch to him as the first 100% Swiss-made watch we did. The sentence is a bit personal. If you have the watch and can read it, then you can write to me and we discuss it. Then, of course, we have the tourbillon itself. The tourbillon is 105-hour power reserve. I don't know if you imagine, on a single barrel, this is nearly unseen. It's something quite unbelievable. 105-hour power reserve. It's 5,000 G shock resistant. On the tourbillon, I think this is quite amazing as well. And 2,000 Gauss anti-magnetism, the double of the 1000 Gauss that most of the people refer or take as a reference. And one important thing as well, we were the first brand in the world, a world premiere, to come with a connected glass. So why and what is it? The watch is 100% mechanical, but if you put your phone over the glass of the watch, you will see that there is a link appearing on your phone. This is like the Genius in the bottom. If you scratch it, then the Genius comes out and say, what can I do for you? If you don't touch it, nothing happens. So it's not invasive. We don't trace, we don't know anything about you. It's just, if you need us, we're here. So we innovate in the business model, as I said, but we are capable to innovate in the watch as we did in the Delta. Maybe another time we speak about it, which is a world premiere, a new reading of time in triangle.
That's a beautiful watch too.
It's a beautiful watch too. I can tell you that was another shock to see that at roughly $3,000, we're coming up with our own mechanical complication, a reading of time that hasn't existed before in the watch industry, and it's patented, so it's only at Bayo BA111 OD.
Okay. Well, thank you, Thomas, for explaining your whole brand, your introduction, and everything about your brand.
And thanks to you for taking the time to listen to us.